Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me for this prayerful pause with the pastor. Um, I've been prayerfully pausing about definitions, especially self definitions. 100 years ago, when I was a middle school music teacher and I was working with the class and trying to, I had two sections each of sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, then plus the choirs in the school. And um, one of the things that I used to do, because my first master's was in education around values clarification, and it has been successfully proven, and my thesis was part of this, that if you can get people to understand a valuing process, they are more likely to be accepting of other people's values. And that when it comes to music, that would also apply, that they would be open to other forms of music. So that was really pretty invaluable as a music teacher. And so I used to have discussions with my kids in class. I don't know if any of them have learned about this subsequently and are watching, but I'm sure they will remember, because I would have, it doesn't really matter, but I would have desks like around the perimeter of the room so everybody could see everybody else. And I would teach in the middle, kind of like how I preach now. Isn't that interesting? Anyway, I hadn't thought of that connection before. But one of the things I used to have them do is to write down different words that would describe themselves. How would they describe themselves? And of course, at that age, with young adolescents, it's mostly about physical appearance and maybe emotional health, for want of a better term. But every once in a while, you get some kid who would put down there, well, I'm Baptist, or I don't. Did anybody ever say they were Christian? No, it was pretty much denominationally based. Of course, like this was 40 years ago. Yeah, probably 40 years ago, and things were different, and so how they defined themselves would be different than today. But then I would get around to this point of saying, well, how would other people describe you? So I've been thinking a lot about that yesterday and today, as I've been watching. I've been getting angry watching some of the GOP senators and their responses to the riots, the seditionists overtaking the Capitol building, and I'm thinking, well, maybe it's terminology. Is there some other terminology that would be more palatable to them? And I'm thinking, on the one hand, be nice to know what that is so we could talk, and on the other hand, I'm thinking, well, how stupid is that? I mean, call it what it is and grow up, people. But then I realized, I've done a lot of listening and reading about how people are defining themselves, people in public office, and how they're frightened, and how their families are being threatened, and all of these things that should never be. And I don't mean to single out Republicans in Washington, because I think the same kind of thing happens in many different fields and in many communities across the country. We're very pugilistic, I guess. We want to do battle with people. Anybody who's different. And then there's the group of us who I don't really think I'm a pacifist. I don't know what the word would be. I don't go looking for a fight, but I'm proud to defend what I believe, and maybe that is pacifist, nonviolent. I certainly hope that I'm a nonviolent person. Regardless, I found myself thinking about this exercise I did with the kids years ago, right? And I'm thinking, boy, I wonder how those people would define themselves. Do they define themselves as men and women of principle? Do they define themselves as people who will stand up for a cause? I don't think anybody sees themselves the way other people see us necessarily. Do you? Usually, in my experience, people see me better than I see myself. I'm looking at my faults. I'm so aware of the ways in which I fall short. I'm thankfully reminded when uh, somebody tells me that, God loves you the way you are, kind of thing. Um, I know that to be true, and living out of that here is sometimes hard, and maybe it is for you. And so I thought to myself, well, what would happen if I did the kids' exercise? And I listed down how I define myself. And so I was doing that mentally, single mom, um, white, middle class, educated, follower of Jesus, whatever, musician, creative person, composer, author, all those kinds of things, family person, very community oriented. And then I got to thinking, I wonder how other people would define me. How am I seen by others? I remember growing up and having my parents say to me, it doesn't matter what other people think of you. That was what my father said. My mother, in her wisdom, also a master's level educator, my mother, in her wisdom, would say, don't shape what you do by what other people think of you, but you need to know what they think so that you can know how to have conversation with them. So, in other words, how to engage them. And I thought, even as a kid, I liked Dad's response better. It was easier. Just don't care what other people think. Just live your life. And I think we all need some of that in our lives. But I think that people also need what my mom said. We need to understand how we come across so that we can either do more of it or do less of it so that we can accomplish what we're trying to accomplish, or so that we can convey what we're trying to convey. Does religion figure into that for you? Does your faith figure into that for you? And when I list the things that I would list to describe myself, is the order in which I list it really the prioritization of my life? Over the years, I've begun to think that it probably is. First thing that comes to my mind, I'm a mom. More so on some level, that's more important to me than anything. Second thing, up in there is defining my privilege, because I'm acutely aware of the privileges that I live with. And then I think the third thing was, Jesus follower. Then I yell at myself sometimes and say, Jesus follower should be at the top of the list. And then I realize that the list shifts, doesn't it? Depending on where we are and what our circumstances are, which quality or trait of ourselves is going to come to the fore, which one needs to be there, which one do we claim. So I don't think it's a static list, and that's one way that I've grown over the last 40 years. I don't think it's a static list. I don't think it's meant to be a static list. But I think that there are probably 4 or 5 things that are at the top that surface, that bubble up, that surface for us to recognize, yeah, that's how I see myself. And then, it really puts it to the test when you ask somebody else, how do you see me? How do you define me? When you think of me, what do you think of? And of course, I ask both people who are very close to me, and I ask those I'm not close to, because our close friends and family, they're going to see us one way and not another. They'll see us through their lens. So that's my invitation to you today. First, it's a little homework assignment. First, write down a few words or phrases that describe who you think you are. How would you describe yourself? And live with that for a little bit. Pray about that. Think about that. Think about different times when each of those has come to the surface as the most important thing that you needed to put all your energy into that part of your self-definition for a while. And then I would, over the next few days, ask some other people, people who you live with, people you're close to maybe, or people you're not if you happen to be in a group. How do you see me? I've been doing this exercise, and I know that how I see myself may not be how other people see me. So I'm really curious. What's a word that you would use to describe me, or two or three? Might be surprised. Either surprised because of how closely it matches up, or surprised at how it doesn't match up. And if it doesn't, then you have the question, do I want it to match up or not? And there's no right or wrong answer here, everybody. This is just to kind of get to know ourselves a little better, because frankly, I don't ever want to be in the position where I'm acting in a way that is counter to what I truly believe. And I think if I don't do this kind of mental exercise every so often, in one form or another, that I too could be led astray, and I could be led to believe things I don't really believe, and I could, well, fill in the blank. You know where that's going. So that's the thought for today. Something greater than ourselves today is really kind of, how do I move through the world? How am I perceived? What do I like about that? What might I want to change a little bit or modify? Thanks for joining me for a prayerful pause with the pastor. I'm Pastor Deb Swift of South Presbyterian Church in Rochester, New York. Our wee Kirk, our merry little band of believers, who I just love with all my heart. We'll see you back here next time, I hope. And until then, God bless. Take care, be safe, and bye for now.